Hi everybody, this is A7XfanBen here with Xerecs, and this is Pirate CSG podcast number 48. We're going to talk about campaign games of Pirate CSG tonight, which are just about the best thing ever, and I think Xerecs can agree. He just finished one, and congratulations on another century of economy finished. It was amazing to see.
Yay!
Yeah, I got the video up on my screen here, so I might reference some pictures. I can kind of scroll through some of them so anybody watching the podcast video later can see it. And for anybody listening or watching, I've got links to his COEC 2019 playlist in the description, as well as the Huge Game Legacy thread, which I'll be looking at soon, and Battle Reports Compendium. So this is just going to be a casual podcast chat about campaign games past and kind of present too, because COEC, did it end in August 2019?
Yes. Ended in August 2019, right before my brothers went back to school for the fall.
Yep, makes sense. Very nice. Would you say it was your favorite summer game so far, or no?
That's tricky. Because every single summer it's something slightly different. So I don't know if this one's was my favorite or not. There were things I liked about this one a lot that didn't happen in previous ones. I don't know. It's tough.
Yeah, I would say it's the most aesthetic one so far, because all the custom islands. I mean, you had more ships and points in play than any of the others, and I really loved how.
Probably, I never did point your ship counts for previous games.
Yeah, I think
so. I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think it looked the biggest, but I do have some recency bias because I didn't look at the other ones recently. But yeah, it was crazy. I loved how the ocean was more like a square, because a few of the past ones were a little bit more of a elongated rectangle. So I like this ocean shape better too, even if that was sometimes annoying probably to reach over the table. I remember in Command the Ocean trying to reach towards like the north sides of the bigger oceans, all lost in Carcuda. It was pretty obnoxious trying to reach ships on the far side of those oceans.
Yeah, trying to get to the middle, like where the two tables met, like basically where Voyanui was, that whole section, it was like a little bit awkward to get there because you had to reach across one of the two tables.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, be careful, don't knock over the ships that are like, on the edge.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that too. Yeah. And it's sometimes hard because if you try to brace yourself against the table, it might move the table or bump it, and then even that can knock over some of the more fragile or smaller ships. So,
Yep. I mean, this one in particular, I've got a folding table for the table number 2. I forget which one it was, but that one, if I get the feeling that if I really leaned on the middle of it with all my weight, I would probably break it.
Yeah. Yeah, my laptop right now.
The other one is yeah. The other table that I use is like a sturdy wooden table that, I can comfortably say, okay, if I lean on this, I'm probably not going to break it.
Yeah.
But the other one, which is just, some plastic and metal, it's like, try not to lean on it too much.
Yep. Yeah, the laptop I'm using now for the podcast is sitting on the same basic square folding table I used for the Caribbean Ocean of Command the Oceans and some of this year's summer games. And yeah, it's kind of, if I move it a little bit, it does wobble. So the one thing annoying about that during Command the Oceans was when I had, and there's going to be, just for anyone listening, there's going to be a ton of spoilers in this episode. So if you haven't read about some of these campaign games, you can read about them first. There's links everywhere. Huge Game Legacy thread especially has a lot of links, or hopefully pretty much all of them. But basically, on Diamond Rock, the custom terrain that Rosinaz made for me, I would have, the English eventually got some army units up there. So the infantry, if I bumped the table just hard enough, some of the infantry...
Oh yeah, those guys are falling.
They would fall all the way off Diamond Rock into the water below. So that set them back up. So
hey, you could pass it off. Random earthquake. They happen at sea.
Yeah, good point. Yep. That's another crazy house rule. Everything we talk about could probably be turned into a house rule tonight. Earthquakes and tsunamis,
I mean,
resulting
like,
tsunamis.
yeah. I mean, you and I play games where we put, like, fabric down on the table. So something you could do is just, like, make a giant wave by just pushing the fabric.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I've thought about, I haven't done it yet, but I've thought about, especially with a game on a floor, where like a fabric sheet is the only thing separating the ships from like the floor or the rug or whatever, or the carpet, I should say. Once the game is over, or if you just want to like abandon the game, you could grab the ends of the sheet and then like not too hard, but kind of fling it up in the air and have all the ships like fly everywhere just to like wreck the setup completely in like a second or two. Be crazy.
That would make me very nervous.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you wouldn't
Because
have
I'd be worried about breaking some of them if I did that.
Yeah, I don't think any would break unless you had like custom islands and terrain that fell on top of ships, but that could still happen. So
Yeah.
I
mean, some of my islands are, they're light, but they're also, a little bit of heft behind them.
Yep.
So I'd be worried about them falling on ships.
Yeah. Man, this makes me think about more house rules. I mean, it's kind of weird because it would be gamey. But imagine if you had a folding table, you've got the legs. Maybe if you roll a certain d6 with a crew that can cause like earthquakes, you could hit like one of the table legs, and then that would cause like anything that like tips over is like capsized and sunk by like the resulting tsunami or something. Man, that'd be crazy.
Clever.
Yeah. Or like
Interesting.
I've thought about, because this has happened on accident for me a bunch of times, when you roll a d6 and you don't have anywhere to roll it except like on the ocean where the stuff is.
Oh yeah.
And then it hits ships, of course. So that could actually be a house rule too, but that would be weird.
Yeah. Okay, this is one of those situations where I actually used a tiny dice. Because their mass is so minuscule that if it hits a ship, it probably won't tip it over.
Yep, that's a good point.
Also, I can fit like 5 of those things in my hand, so it's like, those abilities where it's like, okay, roll 2 dice or roll 3 dice at once. So, okay.
Yep.
Pachoo.
Yep.
There you go.
Exactly. Or if you've got the same cannon ranks all firing at the same ship at once, something like that.
Hey, broadsides attack with 5 dice.
Yeah, like an alternate.
One of them's gonna hit.
Yeah. I think if I used the tiny dice in some of these games with all the ships, I would lose them because they would go underneath the ship's hull, under the deck, between the hull plates.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing too.
Yeah.
That's the risk.
Yeah, that's one thing I don't like about using the little tiny straws quite as much that you can use for measuring. I still like the cards, but anyway, I'll probably always be old school on that. So yeah, I'm looking at see the picture up right now from the YouTube that I just have it paused, but it shows the portal. You've got, it looks like a D8 on top of the portal, and then there's just carnage everywhere. The French and English fighting it out. Looks like the Bonaparte had just been sunk, so that made me happy.
Yeah, that looks like the Bonaparte.
Yeah, when she went down, that was good. That was good for me.
Yeah.
I
believe that's the Dreadnought up there that cancels her S immunity to sink her.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. Oh, that looks like a Four-master right next to her on the right. Yeah. I don't know what it is though. Ooh, that's a French one though. Oh, that's a French ship, not an English one.
Yeah, the hull.
Okay, this is like, the French took revenge for the Bonaparte being sunk, so the Guy Fawkes is like, as you can see, it's tipped over, so it's been sunk.
Yeah.
And the Dreadnought has been on the business end of some cannons over there.
Oh yeah, nice.
And yeah, that is a D8 up there. That D8 was for Voyanui. So every time you would dock at the beach, you would roll the D8, and that would be the number of gold stack you'd be allowed to explore. Didn't have a better place to put it other than on top of that portal, because it was reasonably close to the island, and we would all remember where it was.
Yep, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think I remember a D8 being used for the portal rules, but now that explanation makes total sense. It looks cool too, because it's like a little pyramid peak type thing, so it's actually neat to see there. Yeah,
well,
yeah.
The
that French custom or whatever has the hull of USS Kentucky, I think. So it must be a custom, I guess. I think.
Hang on, let me go see if I can find the actual picture.
Yeah.
Although I doubt it.
Yeah, I'm at 4 minutes 36 seconds in the final report, and then I'll just move around to some of the others too. So yeah, spoiler alert. So the Curse won Century of Economy 2019, but in semi-controversial fashion, because the Spanish had a crazy
Yeah.
7,000 plus gold saved up, but their controller maybe didn't want the Spanish to win too much. So interesting stuff.
Yeah. The Cursed and the Spanish are both controlled by my brother, who I called Ginger Ninja, I think. He's the youngest one of us. I mentioned this and I talked to him about it. He has a little bit of difficulty playing his factions against one another like that.
Yep.
He usually can't help but choose one to, favor over the other. Now, I'm trying to figure out what friendship that is. I'm fairly certain it's custom, but it's not the Premier Republique. That one was already sunk, I think, by this point. So, yeah, I bet that's the Argonaut from Return of Davy Jones.
Okay. Cool. Nice.
Let me go pull up my spreadsheet for that and see if I'm right.
Nice. Yeah, like I said on the forum, I loved the different custom islands used in the game. I think at first Pride Rock was my favorite, but then I got to see some. You showed some close-ups of the shipwreck pathway, and that one really impressed me as well. So.
Yeah. I enjoyed making shipwreck pathway the most.
Nice. Yep.
I think. So yeah, that friendship, I believe that is that previous one was the Argonaut, which has where'd it go? There it is. Right, it's got built-in sim action twice and world hating.
Oh god.
So that's a pretty good ship.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, it's a pretty good ship. Cannons of 2S, 3L, 3L, 2S.
Yep.
Base move of L, 4 cargo spaces, 4 masts, and 19 points.
Okay. Yep.
That's a pretty good one.
Yeah, that's extremely good. Yikes.
Now, unfortunately, my other brother, J.W. Darkhurst, who was English and French, he has a notorious habit of, even with world hating, still missing on the cannons.
Yeah.
So he'll roll like 3 or 4 ones in a row on ships that have really good cannons like this.
Yeah.
Or, when the house rule was still in effect, he would get 1 hit and then 3 misses. And he would just sit there and turn into a raging little gremlin kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't blame him. It is really frustrating sometimes. Yeah. I know from the past few years especially, it's been emphasized even more. I think he officially has worse luck than me at the cannons. So I'm kind of glad to not be able to claim that title anymore. So I don't envy that.
He also he thinks the dice have it out for him anyways, because he seems to struggle with cannon rolls, extra / flame action twice, fleet admirals, boarding attempts.
Yeah.
Anytime he has to roll a dice, he's like, oh, great, I got to roll.
Yeah.
Why can't it just be an automatic ability where I hit you and you lose mast?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he'd have to concentrate more on gold running and cancelers and stuff like that, trading and whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah. Although, to be fair, one time I played a deathmatch against him, English versus French, and I think he had, the Magnifique and a couple other things, and he basically one-shot my entire English fleet in, 2 turns. Because that one game, he hit every single extra action, and he hit every single cannon.
Wow.
I think he did, 2 consecutive successful broadside attacks with La Magnifique.
Yep.
So it's weird.
Yeah.
What happens here? The dice look is odd.
Yeah, it's weird, at your house or whatever, because I've noticed broadsides attack especially seems to hit all the time, almost no matter who's using it. Maybe it's really bizarre.
Yeah.
And I understand how that would influence.
I sometimes have good luck with it.
Yep.
JW sometimes has good luck with it. What gets really ridiculous is when Ginger he starts rolling dice, because I kid you not, there have been turns where he for 3 ships where he would get a 5 and a 6 for everything he rolled. All right, so cannons, extras, boarding, broadsides, you name it, he would get the 5 or the 6. Out of 5 or 6 dice rolls, he got a 5 or 6 every single time. Yeah. It's ridiculous. Yeah. But at the same time, it's also kind of cool because okay, luck.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I guess with my YouTube comment, I just thought the Cursed would have been able to move more of their ships away from that ice flow. But maybe they were heading en route to somewhere important.
I'm not sure. They were all just kind of going back to their home island.
Yep.
I think, or around there.
Huh.
The other thing too, that I didn't know, a good number of the ships that got hit were actually ghost ships and were ghostly, so they shouldn't have lost masts.
Oh, okay. Yep. Right.
But I didn't know that if a ghost ship has something move into it while it's ghostly, nothing happens.
Huh. Yep. Yeah, the pictures of the English-French War are just amazing. A lot of carnage. Yeah, there's pictures where the masts are so thick in the water, the debris, you can hardly see the water in a few spots.
Yeah.
The picture with the Jaguar
particularly around the portal
is amazing. Yeah, it's at like 736. She's got all fire masts. At least I think it's the Jaguar.
Yeah.
It's a custom. But
it reminds me of the Spanish versus the Cursed from last year. Similar thing happened where both sides just kind of bunched up around the portal.
Yep.
And it just got, so congested in there. It was like, okay, I want to move this ship forward. Has to move it over like 3 or 4, downed masts.
Yeah.
That also happened when the Americans were fighting the Spanish as well. It got really nutty, or really dense.
Yeah.
When that was happening.
Yeah. Yeah, that happened in a bunch of battles in Command the Oceans. Probably because the game lasted so long. So, yeah, that one I think the most crazy was Americans versus pirates when the pirates invaded through the whirlpool, and then Americans versus French north of the castle.
Yeah, the spot.
That was crazy. Oh yeah, the spot. That was insane. And that's the type of thing where it was
I've got an inch worth of downed masts on the ground here.
Basically, it was almost a stalemate for a long time too, because they just kept fighting and going at it. And every time a ship would get sunk or taken out of battle, another one would just take its place because both fleets were so stocked with gunships. Crazy. So you were the Americans and the pirates. I don't know if you had any strategies with those fleets that you didn't go into in the battle report, but I always love hearing about the strategy of campaign games.
Yeah. So I played my 2 factions as kind of omnipotent, so if the English and the French did something, I would know about it, or they would know about it. JW didn't.
Yeah.
So he played the English and the French okay, I have to go and see something in order to know about it, how you did for Command the Oceans.
Yeah, and the Caribbean.
I didn't do that for either one. They were partially omnipotent. They knew what was going on elsewhere. So the pirates knew Voya Nui was out there, and they very much wanted to control it. That was objective numero uno when the game started. Control Voya Nui.
Yep. Which,
they eventually did. And managed to do so until the island sank.
Yep.
The Americans, before the Spanish got within the first 3 days of play, the Spanish had over 1K gold. It was just ridiculous.
Jeez.
Because they found the 2 most valuable resources right next to home, practically. And they were able to just, sail 2 or 3 boatloads of resources back, hold on to it until the resources changed, and then cash it all in at once for a massive windfall. And then they'd spend some of it to launch every single ship that had 5 or 6 cargo, which would then get an additional 1 or 2 from their cargo masters. So you've got ships sailing around with 7 or 8 cargo, and then even after a helmsman's been added, you've still got 6 to 7 open spots. It's jeepers.
Yeah.
But before the Spanish took off, the Americans were kind of wary of the pirates because they knew they were out there, but they were willing to just, okay, the pirates are over there, we're over here, we're fine with that. Now, the English concerned them a little bit because there was a little bit of, I don't want to know if to say animosity, but a little bit of tension when the Americans built that colony north of Pyramid Island, because the English had been there, I think, or were going there. And then the Americans explored the island and started to build the colony, and the English got upset about it.
Yep.
They didn't do anything to try and take the island over, but the English were like, oh, great. Did you really have to? Or great, you're here. So some of the early American strategy before the Spanish became an obvious threat was, okay, maybe we should be concerned about the English. All right? I mean, for the longest of times, the Bonhomme Richard and the Providence were stationed at the colony, even, when the war with Spain started and was, starting to go downhill, both of those ships still stuck around that colony because the Americans were that concerned about the English.
Yeah.
Even though they tried to, make an alliance with them to try and fight the Spanish, but that didn't work.
Yeah. I found the lack of enemies that the Spanish had kind of weird. I mean, they didn't really make, until the Americans really went after them, they didn't make a huge show of showing off a big battle fleet. But when they have that much gold and they can easily use it quickly to launch more ships than any other faction, and obviously get the end game condition was most ships afloat at the end for anyone not aware. So they kind of had a stranglehold on that. But I thought the Cursed, especially, they had chances, especially towards the end. They were coming in from what I kind of thought about as the north, sort of, based on some of the pictures. And they were right there, kind of on the edge of that one table, and then they started coming over a bit, but they didn't actually create a big offensive front that would have really made the Spanish. First of all, at least they would have at least spend, and I think eventually the Cursed and Americans with a two-pronged assault probably could have made them start to run out of some of the whiz-kit ships, at least, if not customs. So.
Oh yeah. Well, the other thing, I think I forgot to mention this in the actual report. The Spanish lent 1K gold to the Cursed. So that was an insider trading moment, if you will.
Yeah, that's
so where the Spanish gave the Cursed some gold to launch whatever ships they wanted, and that was kind of hey, let's be friends. So when the Cursed, toward the end, when they were sailing down from the north, kind of toward the west, the idea was because the Spanish were getting tired of the Americans, resisting. So the Spanish were like, okay, we're tired of this. We don't want to spend our own ships. Yo, undead guys, we gave you some gold. Come help us out. And they were on their way to jointly attack the Americans.
Yeah.
But before they could do that, that's when the pirates struck. And then the Spanish were like, well, shoot, you've done our job for us. Never mind, go back to doing whatever you're doing. And that was actually a moment where Ginger said to me, okay, I was gonna attack you with both my factions, but then the pirates started killing the Americans and I felt bad. So I'm like, okay, I'm backing off now.
Wow.
That was a moment of outgame strategy that affected some of the things that happened.
Yeah, no, that is fascinating. But also, I think you did mention that. You at least mentioned, I don't know about the amount, but I know you mentioned something about that. Because I do remember it now.
Yeah.
Unless I'm remembering wrong, but I don't think so. And yeah, that's one of those weird things where it's it's kind of, in my opinion, on the fence, because he loaned money from one of his factions to another. But it is a legitimate reason, because the Spanish had so much that they could afford to lose 1,000 gold, still stay in the gold race, and then
and still have more gold than everybody.
Exactly, which was enough throughout the game to launch more ships than anybody else. The problem is they just didn't capitalize on it at the end. I think it would be it would make more sense, and not that he needs an excuse, but it would be more excusable if the Spanish did use the gold that they didn't give to the Curse, which was a ton, to just, again, they were only 10 behind. It was 70 ships to 60, right? So they only needed about a dozen more. So that's what I don't like, but oh well.
Well, at that point, by the time the events of Report 17, we already kind of knew what the first and second spots were going to be, because you see those pennies there on the home island for the Spanish. Each penny was worth 1,000 gold.
Yeah.
So he had 7 or 8 of those things on his home island, plus more additional gold, and everyone knew, okay, no one has as much gold as the Spanish do. So the Spanish pretty much have second place locked up. So who's going to get first? So what Ginger did was he said, okay, you know what? I've already got second place. I'm going to shoot for the fences. I'm going to have the Cursed get the most ships. That way I get first and second place.
Yeah, okay. I guess that makes sense.
So that's why he didn't...
Okay.
Yeah. That's why he didn't launch for the Spanish.
Okay.
Plus, I think he was like, okay, I'm tired of getting ships out for the Spanish.
Yeah.
All right, I'm tired of it.
I totally understand real life, you know, kind of like logistical issues. Like Command the Oceans, you know, I had to disable the 2 hits for mass house rule at the end, and then it was like I was shooting like wicked fast. Like the way the pirates fell in Command the Oceans was bizarre, but like it didn't take long either. Like their ships got blown up so quick. I mean, they fought back, of course, but it was bizarre. So that's another case of, you know, real life kind of interfering with the game, unfortunately. But yeah, and yeah, getting
that's the other thing too. At the time of this happened, I had lifted that house rule like, you know, I think 2 reports ago.
Oh.
So I think the beginning of report, I think maybe 16 or the end of report 15 is when I lifted the house rule.
Mhm.
So like all the combat that happens that you see in the finale is just regular, you know, 1 hit, 1 mast.
Yep.
And you know so it's more ships could have been sunk, but they weren't.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it does. The explanation for the final standings does make more sense, because then if the Spanish, I mean, it's not playing the factions equally, but it does make sense, because if the Spanish had launched, then the curse may not have been in the top 2 spots, I guess. But
no,
that's that's the other weird thing, because then, I guess I just like an
really
endgame rule where you have it's all equal. Like I don't know if most gold is okay. I guess I like points in play the most because it seems the most fair to me, and then just have that throughout the standings rather than have like alternating most ships versus most gold. So it's kind of funky, at least to me. But yeah.
Yeah. It's not perfect, but it's more or less what I've done for every single one since 2015.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, the one time I reversed it, it caused a huge controversy that we're still talking about.
Yeah,
and that wasn't even for one of these summer games. That was for that
the
economy game.
Yeah.
Where I think our friend just like, you know, stockpiled gold until the end, but I don't think he won or something.
Yeah.
It was weird.
Or no, I think he did, but then the French should have.
It's gone down in history as like, you know, one of those games.
Yeah, it was. I think what it was, the Spanish didn't fight at all, but they had the most gold.
Until the end, when everyone decided, hey, let's go kill the English.
They didn't, but then I think they had a tiny bit more gold than French, but they both had like over 2,000, I think. And then the French were only behind by like 14, but then they had like 20 on like the Fee2, and she was like L away from home or something.
Within S of the home island, but didn't unload.
Exactly. So so for me, the French, you know, I'd like to have the French as the winner of that game by far. So yeah, that. Well,
to do a little bit of clearing up about that. That I think was still, we started that I think like in 2015 or so, which was like, you know, 4 or 5 years ago. So at the time, Ginger was 4 or 5 years younger, and so he was like, okay, being a wee bit more like, you know, not as, I guess, fair, or being more willing to be like, you know, gamey, because he came back and told to me like, you know, I was afraid of being home island raided, so I was sneaky. I hid a coin under my home island so that you couldn't see it. Therefore, you couldn't take it. So that plus the Fee2, the French probably would have won by like, you know, a very like, you know, extremely narrow margin. But they would have had maybe 30 gold more than what they ended up with, which would have put them in first.
Yeah.
But they didn't.
Yeah. I want to say from the report, I may not be remembering it right, but I want to say the Fee2 had enough to win based on her hold. So even with like a gamey stolen big coin, you know. And yeah, in the data doc, I have the French first because that's it was too much for me to.
Yeah, that one I think really cemented home to me. Okay, most ships and then the most gold.
Yeah,
because it worked for the first one. I decided, yeah, let's flip it around. What if we flipped it around? Okay, let's not do that again.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, most ships is pretty solid because the faction with the most points in play is probably going to be the same faction as most points in play. So anyway, and it's easier to count, of course. It's faster to count.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Spanish treasure system was one of the most amazing I've ever seen, because they had 2 or maybe 3 chain exploring lines. That's crazy.
Yeah, so they didn't have a chain explorer per se from Pride Rock to home, but they had at least 2 that went from the archway there in the north back to home, and they had 1 that went from one half a split almost all the way back to home. So that's a lot of ocean to cover.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, that means they had enough ships to where they had a more or less equal exchange of cargo going down the line. So they had like 20 to 30 ships that all had like 4 cargo spaces open that they could use to just, zip the gold home straight away.
Yep. I like how you use the lighting too. I'm just zipping around some of the pictures. I love the sunlight shots because you can sometimes see through
those
the
are my
sails a little
favorite.
bit. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I try to get that with the camera, but I'm not always successful.
Yep.
So I take a picture, I'm like, well, that looks great, but that's not what I'm seeing with my eyeballs.
Yep.
The other times, too, I have to, sometimes play around with, the exposure and whatnot. So that's why sometimes it's like, ooh, that's really, really bright white light coming off the table there. And then other times it's like, ooh, wow, that looks really cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've thought about doing like effects on pictures for battle reports, but usually I'm just going too fast or would rather just play than mess around with my camera during the game. Yeah. I did that for like one report. I think it was at night during Command the Oceans, but only a few pictures have it. So.
Hang on a sec. Someone just banged on my gate. I'll be right back.
Yeah, no problem.
Hang on.
Yep. Yeah, I'm just flipping through some of the pictures for Century of Economy. You can see they had a couple different tables set up with the space in between the table almost at the same height, which is cool. There you can see the massive curse line of gunships spreading out from their home island kind of in the north, at least from my directional standpoint, and then the Spanish off to the left there. So yeah, I just find it interesting that the Cursed won 2 campaign games in a row now, because they won Century of Economy in 2018 as well. So pretty wild. And yeah, so Xerecs did a point count at the end of the game and came up to 5,651 points. So this game easily becomes the second biggest game of all time after only Command the Oceans, along with 291 ships in play. So pretty crazy. And then that's one of the pictures where Boya Nui had sunk. It was pretty much in the center of the ocean, but then the massive ice floe started moving from there. Here you see some of the Spanish ships, Corazon Dorado in there. Here's one of the custom cursed ships.
Alright, I am returned.
Nice. Yeah, I just mentioned
Someone was looking for my brother.
Yeah, I mentioned the epic point count. Second biggest game ever now.
Yeah, I was actually surprised when I did the math for that. And that was July 17th, which is like literally, that's right before the Spanish and Americans went into war.
Yep.
Like I did the point count, and then the next turn they started fighting.
Nice.
And I forget what report that started in, but I want to say that's reports 6 and 7 is when they started fighting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'll have to go back and look.
Yeah.
But I am not certain if the point count increased or decreased after that point, because both sides launched, and then the English and the French also were fighting each other at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's conceivable that the point count went up before it started to go back down when the Americans got eliminated.
Yep. Nice.
I didn't do a point count at the very, very end of the game. I probably should have, but there it is.
Yeah, I'm thinking it was probably still smaller, though. I mean, it looks smaller based on the pictures at the end of the final report, and then with all the combat and the house rule gone. But
I don't know. Some of those cursed ships are mighty expensive. That's why the cursed asked for 1,000 gold.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, maybe.
I think they once again did what I did in 2016 when I had them. They went and found every single sea monster we have in our collection, WizKids and custom, and added in, okay, on top of that, every single sea creature, so Titans, Sea Dragons, Kraken/Octopi, and they spent, like, I think 2 to 3 turns launching all of those.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like a dozen ships, or like a dozen ships, and there's a couple of them that have really high point costs. Like the ones that are attached to Fiends of the Blood Homage, the Baraki, which I think they, as long as they've got all their segments, they have Captain and Plus Out to their base move built into them.
Mm-hmm.
So those are, like, really expensive. And I think almost all of them have a model.
Nice.
So I was like, yeesh.
Yeah, I will say the curse it's like a dense, multi-layered line of cursed stuff at the end of the game, stretching from the home island to like northern Spanish territory. That was really impressive to look at. That must be complete.
Yeah, that show of force, if you will, was one of the main reasons that, okay, the Spanish weren't ever going to attack the Cursed because it's controlled by the same guy. The English and the French were too caught up fighting each other to really, like, disengage and put aside differences to attack the Cursed. And also they're like, okay, that's a lot of gunships. We're kind of depleted. Let's not attack those guys or poke them with a stick.
Yeah.
And the pirates wanted nothing to do with it as well for the same reason. It was like, we're feeling pretty confident about, our fleet and our capital ships, but especially after Voya Nui sank and it became much easier to sail at the pirates, they're like, yeah, let's not attack them. The Spanish look like a slightly more promising target, but not the Cursed.
Mm-hmm.
Even though a lot of what the Cursed could bring to bear was, like, gimmick stuff, like, mind controlling, extra action, like, denier kind of things. Not a whole lot of their battle fleet was, like, very, very top tier gunship.
Yeah.
Some of them were, but I think the ones that were probably custom.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah, I've got the Pirate CSG data spreadsheet up too with the campaign game results from over the years, which now has updated pictures in the Huge Game Legacy thread too at the end. So yeah, for your game specifically, the Americans won, and then the French won 2 in a row. The English won 2017, and then the Cursed have won the last 2. That actually puts the Cursed in the best position.
The Pirates and the Spanish haven't won a single one of my summer games.
I know, and that's crazy because you could make the argument that they're the top 2. So yeah, that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like the Spanish.
And last year when I had them, I wanted them to win, but that wound up not happening.
Yep. Yeah, it looks like the Spanish have 3 runner-up second place finishes in your games.
Yeah.
Nice. And then the French, I love noticing little anomalies and stuff. So the French have 2 wins, and then they don't have a finish better than 4th place in the other 4 games. So, yeah. Yeah, the Americans finished 1st in 2015. They haven't finished in 1st or 2nd since then. They've got a bit of a drought. They keep getting worse. So 3rd, 4th, 6th. So, interesting. English with 3 4th place finishes. Yeah, I just finished rereading the Battle Reports for Vassal Campaign Game 1, and it still impresses me to this day. I think it's still probably my favorite campaign game, at least for the smallest number of flaws, because Command the Oceans was very demanding, and it got pretty annoying at times, where Vassal Campaign Game 1, of course, just played on the computer, so it's easier logistically, and there's no time-based rush to finish it, really. So I'd say CG1 that we played was still pretty much my favorite. It's just amazing. Yeah, I posted a comment there today because I just finished rereading the reports earlier this morning, and I said, cancelers remind me of nuclear radiation shutting down anything that gets close. Because it's like when you've got a canceller cluster with like 3 or especially 3 or more, it's almost like it reminds me of like radiation, because like
Oh,
crews
yeah.
get shut down. Like any crew that come close, you can shut down like a bunch of them all at once. So, and it reminds me kind of like
Yeah.
the Americans and the Curse fighting in CG3, where they each had. That was crazy. That was probably one of the craziest
Yep.
canceling situations I've ever seen. And it got
Oh,
weirder
yeah.
because eventually the Americans captured your cursed cancelers, or at least some of them. So eventually they had like 8 or 9 or something. So then I put the S range tool out and like had the circles representing like the zone of cancellation. It's like almost the whole battle fleet was like enveloped. So, or not the whole thing, but a bunch.
Yeah. That's the other thing that made the pirate fortification around Voyanui and Tutorial really kind of scary.
Yeah.
Because they had the Mobilis and Christian Fior on, Christian Fior was on a submarine, and the Mobilis obviously was under the water, so that was 2 off the bat. Then they had the Rampage, plus I think one of their own, I think Tia Dalma. All of those ships were right there at the mouth of the harbor around Tutorial Island. It's like, well, good luck getting inside without using the whirlpool.
Yeah. And of course they have Calypso, so that's going to be tough too. So.
Oh, yeah, that was the other thing. They launched her from the military port on the inside of the bay to give her the most protection.
Yep.
Or as much as they could offer.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a captain and an oarsman on the ship as well. On the off chance that someone was able to get inside and board her ship, she had like 2 meat shields.
Mm-hmm.
So she could survive 2 boarding attempts before drastic measures had to be taken.
Yep.
But I think I even said it in one of the reports. All right, trying to get inside Voyanui Bay was like, all right, let's go poke the hornet's nest.
Yeah, I really enjoyed watching what the Pirates did in this game. I don't know if I was really rooting for any specific faction. I was rooting for the English against the French, of course. I guess at times I was rooting for the Spanish just because I felt like they deserved to win, even if they had it, really good with the Cargo Masters, which I don't like seeing in campaign games. The American-Spanish War was probably the most interesting part of the game, just seeing the different tactics and stuff that happened and some of the big moments. I was actually surprised when they couldn't hold any of their 10 masters. Spain had 3, and they all were sunk. So that was really impressive on your end with the Americans to do that. Yeah, some of the pictures.
Part of that was the revelation on both sides of that battle, but we realized that the way I set up the rules, fire just circumvents the house rule completely. So fire pot specialists, exploding shot, fire shot, all of those just completely go around the house rule. So what wound up happening was, like on the American side, they purposely launched gunships where, okay, captain, helmsman, fire pot specialist, exploding shot, and fire shot. I mean, I think that was like almost exactly what was on the Mohican or something similar to that, where, okay, I could rip off like, 2 fire shots or 2 attempts for a fire shot in one turn with all really good cannons. So it's like, okay, 1 fire mass, 2 fire mass, and then, ships just burn.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, like for when I've done that house rule, I have it. I guess I thought your games were this way too, but I have it where you have to use the firepot specialist when you would eliminate a mass, because or else they become too powerful, and they're already quite powerful. So, like, to get the fire hit, you got to hit normally once, and then when you would, that doesn't eliminate a mass, and then the second hit, you use the firepot specialist to get that second hit to set it aflame. That's how I like to do it. And that's how...
Yeah, I'm probably going to do something about that for next year.
Yeah, and
so, thinking about rules already.
Yeah, I don't know if that's already a thing in CG4, but it definitely should be, so I'm gonna look at that right now, or at least get the tab up to make a note about it for later, just to clarify that should be the case without a doubt. Or else, yeah, it just becomes even more powerful. So.
Ooh, excuse me.
Yeah, one thing I noticed when I was rereading the CG1 battle report is that when the English launched that huge battle fleet towards the end to combat the Spanish, a ton of their ships had oarsmen, but they scuttled a ton of ships in the battle. So I'm not sure if I didn't realize that you weren't supposed to do that, or if they actually didn't have oarsmen those specific ships. But I think they probably should have rowed some of them back between, obviously the keyword, but also to try to repair them. I think the English got a little bit overconfident in the long run that they could outlast or outgun the Spanish. But the Spanish just kept fighting and they just kept plugging the gaps. It was a stalemate for a long time. So many reports where it's just back and forth, and the English made almost no progress on the sea in terms of heading south. It took them forever to get the Spanish from island, but at that point both fleets were almost spent, basically. So that was wild.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember last year when the Spanish, tried to Inquisition the Curse because unholy demons. But the similar thing happened. The Spanish came in with all the confidence in the world. Oh, they're just cursed. We'll just, mow them over because we're Spain. Fear the might of, the Holy Cross or whatever have you. And when the cursed not only blunted them back not once but twice, and then followed up and came to them, that was like, oh boy. That was a reverse situation from CG1, where the English tried to get to the Spanish, but then, by the time they did, it was like, oh, yikes, we're kind of out of ships.
Yeah.
But my 2018 game, when the Spanish tried to get to the Curse, they realized we're kind of spent.
Yep. And then, that makes another thing about CG1 is that it's the only Vassal campaign game so far to have a close finish, because some of the final reports, the Spanish had like 32 ships and the English 29 and the Pirates 3 or whatever. So the Spanish and the English were close pretty much until the end. I think the Spanish only had around 20 ships afloat at the end of play. And then CG2 and CG3 were both like massive blowouts where my winning fleets I think the English had just over 1,200 points in play, and the Americans in CG3 had like over 2,400. So CG1 is unique in that it was really close too at the end. So it was great.
Yeah. That situation with the English and the Spanish from CG1, I keep hoping something like that will happen in one of my summer games.
Yeah.
Although I don't know if there's enough time.
That's the thing. Yeah.
For fleets to get that big and then just completely go at each other like that.
Yep. That's the eternal question of physical campaign games. It's just you run out of time, or stuff happens, or somebody's got to leave.
Yeah.
It's just really hard to avoid that. So, yep. And yeah, like I said, CTO, I've had to force it. I disabled the 2 hits per mast, and then I disallowed repairing, and then I rushed the combat, at least in a lot of the cases. So, yeah. Oh well. It's so tough. That's one of my goals. That's one of my biggest long-term goals with Pirates, is do like a game that's just huge, like at least 5,000 points, hopefully.
That's what I got this summer.
Yeah. Yep. But then play it perfect to the end, which would probably take an additional 1 or 2 months longer than you would ever expect. So if you're planning 3 months, maybe plan for like 5. So then you could keep the house rules intact, keep resources in gold in play, and then have it be, last fleet standing no matter what. So you don't have to do a point count or anything. So, but that's a long-term goal. So.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I'm limited. Yeah.
No, you go ahead because it'll probably be more relevant.
Okay. Well, I'm limited with my summer games because I only have the summer vacation.
Yep.
From kind of sometime around the beginning of June to now, about the beginning of August. So that's barely 1.5 months of time.
Yeah.
I wish I could do it to where beginning of June through to about the middle of September. But I don't know if that's ever going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, CTO was the longest physical one I've done. Basically 3 months, or 3 months in a week or whatever. So, and yeah, just to finish the comment on CG1, at the end of my comment, I said at the end it looks like the Spanish may have won by stalemate either way, because they had Fior on the Nautilus, submerged, and then they had Nemesio Diaz on the Acorazado, obviously on the surface. The English didn't have any cancelers at that point. They only had HMS Challenger with the sub-hunting, but she only has 2 4S cannons. So the English would have to capture Nemesio Diaz on the Acorazado, which is
Good luck.
really, I know, that alone is super hard. In order to bring the Nautilus to the surface or allow the Challenger to shoot at her by canceling Fior, then the Challenger can just shoot at the Nautilus normally, which wouldn't really work with those cannons. So then I said at the end, if it was the Nautilus alone, because the English could take out all the other ships, hopefully including the Acorazado, if it was just the Nautilus versus a bunch of English ships, I would do points in play probably to like do a tiebreaker, because there also would be a stalemate with the Nautilus sitting underwater. So that's not really fair to win. So I think I would, at that point, assuming the English had more points in play, more than like 32 or 25 or whatever was on the Nautilus, the English would win in that case. But just getting there would be really hard. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm looking at this picture of Pride Rock with the Bouchuan and Spanish ships surrounding right at the end. Yeah, last picture of the finale report. Awesome.
Oh, really? Oh, that's one from my
Yeah, from the big.
Let's see. So that wasn't part of the pictures I had in my file for report 17.
Yep.
That was part of a group of ones that I think made it into the I think made it into reports, but I'm not positive. Yeah, that one. So these pictures are from when our friend came back over from that economy game before he moved north to, I think it's around Seattle is where he wound up going. We had like, a weekend where we played 3 or 4 games, back to back to back to back to back.
Yep.
And I've got pictures for all of those. I just haven't made the vids for them yet. But, this was one of those days to where, I took, I think, sunlight pictures of the game. I don't think I took game action pictures, but I'm not positive. So some of those ones at the very end when I'm talking about, okay, point costs and whatever and whatnot, some of those could be from like a dropped report. Like something that should have been between reports 7 and 8, but never was.
Huh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's neat.
And I found it, after I had already done all the recording for report 17. I'm like, I just found these, and I just finished all the recording. Oh, no.
I think it's perfect, though, because when you showed them, you were wrapping up the game and talking about overall, so I think it works perfectly. The picture at 26...
Yeah, I just wish I had caught it sooner.
Yeah, the picture at 2652 is really cool because the sun is hitting the San Cristobal sails, and the orange-yellow sticks out and really shows that ship, which is neat. I know I've got some pictures from games that I haven't used, mostly just Command the Oceans, but usually they're just almost duplicates because it's a picture with or without the flash where I use the other version instead in the actual report, or it's like a slightly different angle on the same situation that really doesn't need to be in there. A lot of times I love a picture of this game, of course, especially with some of our campaign games last like 2-3 years. They've gotten really beautiful, basically. Sometimes I include more pictures than I need to, but I don't really ever regret it because it's really fun to just document it. So, yep.
Yeah. A lot of times what happens to me is because I'm the one who takes pretty much all the pictures. So I'll take pictures of stuff that happens not on my turn, for my 2 brothers, their turns and whatnot. And then it's my turn. I put the camera down, play out my turn, and then go back to taking pictures. So what winds up happening is I forget to take pictures of stuff that happens on my turn. Or, it gets to a heated moment and I forget to take pictures entirely because I'm focusing in on what's happening, where it's like, okay, you've got your 3 cancelers versus my 3 cancelers. How are we going to do this?
Yeah.
So it's like,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I just sometimes forget.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I miss, sometimes important things. Like, oh, yeah, I hit with that broadside attack. Or, oh, yeah, I, dismasted that ship. And you see it sometimes, in the reports where it's like, all, in one frame or one picture, it's like, and here come all the 5 masters. And, 2 or 3 things later, and all the 5 masters are now derelict. It's like, something happened here.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes
I forgot to take, pictures of everything.
Yep.
What the heck is that?
Nice. Got a truck or something. Yeah, I forgot.
Yes. What the heck is outside? I assume that's a delivery van. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot to take pictures once in a while. That's one thing I concentrated on this year, is really documenting the games. I almost had never done videos of the actual gameplay until that 6x150 game, where I made sure to do that rather often. Yeah. Yeah, it's cool.
I've thought about doing that, taking live video.
Yeah.
But my issue is I do not want background sounds to get into the video.
Yeah.
So if there's stuff going on in the house or whatever, people talking, I'm not sure if I want that ambient sound in my videos, which is why I I record, I script out and record everything in my room with the door closed and as quiet as possible. And then I go in and edit the audio files themselves and reduce the background noise so that you can try to hear it as little as possible. So if I just had the the raw video audio in conjunction with the picture, I'm not sure if I could I guess tweak that to my satisfaction, because I'd be worried about oh, that's a sound out and somewhere else in the house, a door slam, or someone opens up the fridge, or someone starts cooking something out in the kitchen, loudly or whatever. So that's the kind of stuff that I don't want to wind up in the video.
Yeah.
The other thing is during the games, we're not just sitting there in the room talking to one another. Oftentimes we'll queue up music for something. I'll play something off my phone, or we'll hook up play something off our stereo, whatever. Or I'll sometimes bring out my laptop and go through a playlist of stuff with some speakers to give some ambiance.
Yep. Yeah. For me, I'm lucky I've got a room that I've played in this year especially, where it's kind of isolated from most of the rest of the house. And I'm less of a perfectionist. If I'm going to take live video, it's just going to be sometimes I think I had the air conditioner on for at least one of the games this year. So I just kind of wing it. So I figure it's not going to get
the room we play the game in this year. It's a converted garage space, so it's really big.
Yeah.
But there's not a whole lot of air conditioning in there. Mm-hmm. So what we had to do at one point was we had to bring in a standing fan to get some air circulating through there, so it would we'd not be getting too hot. And also what happened was that would be when the air conditioner did turn on, we just kind of stand in front of the vent and go, oh, cool air. That's very nice.
Yep. I think I did that during Economy Edition because that game was in June. I think I remember.
Oh, yeah.
I remember Command the Oceans was really unique for me because September 2017...
It was in the winter.
Partly. It ended then. But September 2017 here in New York was wicked hot. So I think there were days where it was
jeepers.
Over 90, multiple days in a row, I think. And I had an air conditioner in maybe both rooms, I think, but it was still, I had to cool the room down first to play. But then, it ended around, I think, December 15th. So by the end of it, there was snow on the ground and it was 30 outside. So it was a really unique
game. Oh, that sounds so lovely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. For inside it is nice, usually. But yeah.
I mean, today, it's November 9th. It was 91 degrees here today.
Oh,
I'm
God.
come on.
Yeah.
Please, cool off.
Yeah.
It's it needs to not be summer anymore.
Yeah, yeah, I
Right,
hear
we've
you on
been through
that.
fall. Please give us the winter.
Yeah, yeah, I don't like the snow, but sometimes the heat is worse for me. So anyway, but yeah, CTO is a really crazy experience where I got to play in a huge range of temperatures over the course of those 3 months. So that was a really unique experience. So moving on
Yeah.
to the Pirate CSG data spreadsheet in the Huge Game Legacy tab. So I've updated the overall results for all the games between both of us, and with those updated results, the English are still first at overall rank. So their overall finish or placement in these games is 2.6. So you want this to be as low as possible, of course. The Cursed move into second at 2.90 with consecutive victories. And I think part of what they're benefiting from is they weren't on their own in some of my early games. I had like a faction, the Merc Corsair Rebels, among others. So I think they kind of benefit from that. I'm seeing between both
They
of our
might also be
games.
benefiting from some of my more overpowered customs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm only seeing
Just a hunch.
only one finish for them over the years worse than fourth place, which was fifth in CG1, where they actually played pretty well. Um, so yeah, and recently they've been second in CG3 and then first in the last two CUEC games. So yeah, they benefited from various things. And yeah, just as a disclaimer, I wouldn't really recommend playing the Cursed in a campaign game if anybody listening wants to try. Um, Without customs or some kind of rules to aid them,
Yep.
They're probably not going to be the second best faction. It's not like they're actually that good. The Pirates, Spanish, and French, and usually the Americans should all beat them in most campaign games. So these rankings are kind of getting a little weird, but they're not exactly definitive campaign game rankings, in my opinion, anymore. But anyway, but the Pirates are third at 3.07, but
yeah.
Go ahead.
Just looking at your column there for the wins for the Pirates, 3 games in a row they've been third.
Yeah.
So Vassal Campaign Game 3 last year, and then this year.
Yep.
So 3 years of third.
Yep.
They're consistent at least.
Yeah. Yeah, and they had a couple of second place finishes in a row. In my early games, they were first, second. So yeah.
Oh yeah, I see those.
Yeah, and I think I don't know, the French might be the least well, they were consistently bad early on for me, but then they're kind of all over the place. Oh yeah, I remember.
Oh yeah.
This is what I remember from the Huge Game Legacy thread. They were first in both of your games, but they were last in both Vassal games, CG1 and CG2. So that's a really unique one. So they dominated physical play, but they sucked at the virtual version. So yeah, even though, and that's where it gets kind of weird. They were third in Vassal Campaign Game 2, which sounds good, but that was actually last in that game. So it only had 3 fleets. So that's another thing that kind of destabilizes the results, because the French kind of benefit in that game from finishing third, even though they probably didn't play as good as the Cursed from CG1, even though the Cursed were fifth in that game. So yeah, it gets weird. And CTO, Command the Oceans, was strange because the Pirates finishing fifth was bizarre. They looked like a decent favorite for quite a while. And then at the end, with all the combat and the house rules disappearing, they got absolutely slaughtered at home by like almost a 3-pronged attack by the Jades, the Curse, and the English. So you would have expected them to finish on the podium, so to speak, like first, second, or third, but fifth was the end result. So a lot of weirdness.
I think if you had been able to keep the house rule up and play Command the Oceans out, with all the rules intact and nothing modified, I think it would look very different.
I think it would look somewhat different.
Well, maybe not the French, but the Pirates might have done better.
Yeah.
And the Spanish might have done worse.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I don't think it would have been completely different, but at least somewhat. So, because theoretically, I mean, all the factions, benefit or lose from the lifting the house rule relatively equally. The Americans may have been hit hardest, probably, because they were fighting the French, and they couldn't repair at one point once that was lifted.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But anyway, that was just a classic game. That was crazy. So the Pirates third overall between all of our games. Spanish are fourth at 3.29 average finish. Americans fifth at 3.54. The French are way back in sixth at 3.73. So yeah, the French.
And that's seventh place.
Yeah, and then other, which is just a random inclusion. That's really random. But anyway, and then yeah, the French are they're weird. I just realized they've never finished second, so they have 3 wins, but no better than third in any other games. So that's kind of why they're down low, and they haven't not done well recently. They had a pretty solid 2016 and 2017. That's where all their wins came, those 2 years. And then they've been, past 2 years, no better than fourth. So.
Yeah, and then there was, like, I guess the controversy last year with the French more or less suiciding off the face of the map.
Oh, I hated that. Yeah, I forgot about that. Don't remind me.
Sorry, dude.
No, that's all right. But yeah. And then.
Yeah, I wasn't fond of that when that happened.
Yeah.
Myself, because I didn't like it, but I didn't stop it. I was just like, you know what, fine, whatever. That was, I think, one of those instances, because that was, again, that year, it was my brother Ginger had the French and the Cursed, and he, I think, chose the Cursed as his faction to go. And he was just, running gold with the French, and then the pirates attacked them, and he was like, fine. You know what? Fine. I guess he was, in a mood that entire summer.
Ginger
He was like, you know what? Yeah, Ginger.
Yeah, I don't
know.
I don't think I would want to play against him, unfortunately.
Well, I think a non-campaign game, it would be quite interesting to play against him.
Yeah.
Now, I tried to get him in for Vassal CG4.
Well, he was.
But
he was.
He fell through on that.
Yeah.
He's just so busy with other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot what I was going to say, but something about the results. Oh, the CWC 2019 gets the new record for most gold ever saved. So the Spanish was over 7,000. So I'll try to remember to add that to the official records post or whatever I made recently.
Talk about redonkulous amounts of gold. There you have it.
Yep. Yeah, I guess I haven't topped 1,000. I think the most I've had is the English had 864 in CG1 before the launch. So I'm pretty sure.
Nifty.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when that first started in your games. I was like totally shocked.
Right?
I don't know if it was. I think it was the Winter Economy game. I don't know if it was at the end or during it. You said something about 2,000. I was like, what? I was like completely shocked.
Oh yeah, that's what that started with the Winter Economy game.
Yeah.
Ever since I changed over to resources, people have just like, okay, save. Like we're back in the 1930s.
Yeah.
Like, save all the gold. Save every penny. Hoard it.
Yeah. I know. I find it interesting that saving gold is like it's not effective in the campaign game, because that's what I didn't do in the 3 wins I have. And it's like a reverse strategy of real life, where it's you don't want to follow the real life principles of like saving. So I find that kind of amusing, but yeah.
Well, I tried to do that with the Pirates and the Americans. They didn't necessarily hoard it for long.
Yeah.
My big issue was figuring out, okay, what do I want to launch? Because the Pirates have pretty much everything under the sun. So I was like, okay, give me a minute or 3 here, guys. I got to figure out what I want to put into the water for them. And then the Americans, early on, it was kind of similar. It was like, okay, the Americans got quite a bit. There's, the WizKids stuff, and then there's the custom stuff. I was like, okay, what do I put where? And who do I put on the ships and all that stuff? So I was like, okay, so I need a turn or 3 to figure out what I'm going to launch. Well, let me just grab some gold while I'm at it. So I have, like, some savings down the line.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing I love about the Vassal campaign games, is there's not like time pressure to start a turn, so you can think about stuff for a longer amount of time in between. And that's it's good you mentioned the Pirates, because that's exactly the struggle I've had in CG4, because they've had a great system so far, and the possibilities are truly endless, because they have the most WizKids ships, but then we're allowing all custom already. So it's like completely absurd, because I've been going into Epic Seas mostly to try to see if there's anything else on the Pirates, then I know there's custom sets like your 3 and then Kaz 2. There's like 5 other custom sets just between you two that I can look at.
I've got,
and then there's Kevin Mike, so yeah.
There's all. That's one of the reasons that starting this year. Sorry, my bad. I put a hard limit for the custom stuff for that we could use for the game. So only our stuff, because we're all familiar with it.
Yeah.
So that's my the first 2 sets, Return of Davy Jones and Fiends of the Blood Islands, and those 2 only because I actually have models for those.
Yeah.
We also allowed Darkhurst's first 2, which Fiddlesticks, he's gonna rip me a new one for this. I forget what 2 they are. I think it's Dark Tides and then Seas of Doom are their names. So those 4 were the only custom stuff we were allowed to dip into this year.
That's still a lot.
Yeah, that's still quite a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, Return of Davy Jones, I think, has a final number of like 120 pieces, give or take, because, some treasures and crew. Fiends of the Blood Islands is much bigger than that. With, let me do a quick look. Let me pull up my spreadsheet.
Yeah. Do you think you'll have
each of yeah?
Do you think you'll have any Spheres Magna customs available for next year's UEC?
Maybe, if I can get my hands on enough duplicates.
No.
Because that's how I'm bringing these off the paper, is I go duplicate hunting.
Yeah.
So I have to, the Ionics have, 10 5-mast ships. So I would have to find 10 spare 5-mast ships, plus, a couple 6ers that I could turn into and mess around with.
Yeah. You could
wow, hang on.
You could look for Black Friday
that's why.
sale. Black Friday sale at Hills Hillside Gaming might see Ocean's Edge packs go on sale. So you could try to get lucky on those and find 6 masters from there, but yeah, that's
maybe, but I'm thinking about Christmas.
Yeah,
down the line.
Yeah.
My mind is already down the line for my 2 brothers for Christmas. I'm like, okay, I gotta save for them.
Yeah.
Which is why I like, that deal of the day you mentioned the other day, with that big lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, interesting.
Yeah, I like that one.
Well, speaking of that, ends really soon.
Oh, okay. Huh.
$20. That looks tempting still.
Huh.
I don't know.
Take a peek at it.
Huh. I'll have to keep my eyeball on that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and
but
all right, yeah.
Yeah.
Some of those new lots.
So I'm actually a little bit looking at my sets again. I'm a little surprised. I thought Fiends would have more than Return of Davy Jones. But it caps out, I think, at usable ships around 87.
That's a bunch.
So I think what it is there's the bulk of stuff is in the unique treasures, the islands themselves, and some of the other extra things help make up the bulk of Fiends of the Blood Islands. And then Spheres Magna is, I think, it's going to be one of the 2 largest sets that we ever make. Because I know Darkhurst has, he's fully released, I think, 2 sets. He's working on his 3rd, and there's a 4th one after that.
Oh, wow.
Or it's the other way around. Yeah, he's going to wind up, I think, with more sets finished than I am.
Wow.
So he's got 2 finished. He's working on a 3rd and a 4th. And then there's a 5th one that I collaborated with him on again. Because, he really helped me make the first 2.
Yep.
Return of Davy Jones, that was just me saying, okay, I want to make some ships for the Cursed. Help me make the other stuff for, everyone else. So all the Cursed pieces I made for RDJ. But everything else outside of a couple things at the top, he had a hand in.
Interesting. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the questions I had for this podcast is, what is the best campaign game? I thought CG1
that I have played, or in general.
I would say Either or you could do two answers. Yeah, if you want.
Okay.
Or they could be the same.
Shall I go first, or do you want to answer first?
Yeah, you can go first.
Okay. Favorite campaign. Ooh, I might have 3 answers.
Nice.
Okay, for overall, it's a toss-up between Command the Oceans and the economy game that you played. I really like those two a lot.
Thank you.
Because I can remember, like, okay, when's the update coming out? When's the next report? When's the next report? And like, there was so much detail, and the pictures were so nice. It was like, ooh. I kept like, okay, can you, like, do 2 reports in a day? Can you do 2 reports in a day, maybe?
Oh god.
I was like, what's happening? What happens next? So that's why, like, I was like so upset as well with you when the economy disaster happened. I was like, oh no, it didn't finish. Oh, darn it. And then Command the Oceans, reading it and following along with it, as it came out, I was like, ooh, oh, this is so cool.
Yeah.
Like, when the Americans discovered the castle, that was like, I'd never thought of that before. Why did I not think of that before? That's awesome.
Nice.
So that's why, for overall campaign games, it's a toss-up between those two.
Mm-hmm.
And then for campaigns that I've played in, I don't know if I have a favorite.
Mm-hmm.
Because the ones that I've played in, I think, every single Vessel campaign game so far. Excuse me. And then there's my own summer games. Plus, I think there was one undocumented one I did way back when. Like when the collections collectively between all 3 of us, me and my 2 brothers, we had maybe 50 ships between the 3 of us.
Mm-hmm.
And we thought, oh, this is cool. We've got, like, every ship we own out on the table. And I was like, oh, this is cool. All the ships. It was like, yeah. So it's a real big toss-up for me for ones that I've played in.
Mm-hmm.
Parts of Vassal Campaign Game 1 were fun and enjoyable. Like, the French holding out as long as they did, the stuff that I was able to do with the pirates, that was cool, strategizing and playing for them. The Americans, not so much in that game. Vassal Campaign Game 2, I had visions of glory, but, things didn't quite turn out how I thought they would be. I had this plan for Campaign Game 2 to have, like, the Black Pearl and I think a 4-masted pirate ship from Pirates of the Kraken Sea, that custom set that is kind of all jumbled up, if you can find it still. I was like, I'm going to have, like, 2 super speedy pirate 4-masters. This is going to be awesome. But it didn't quite work that way. I felt good about Campaign Game 3. I was like, oh, yeah, Kirsch, this is going to be cool. Because I was also, Campaign Game 3, we were playing with some newer faces. So I figured that, okay, probably in the end it's going to come down to me and Ben, because both of us are going to wipe out these new guys, or Ben's just going to pick up steam and steamroll everyone, which is kind of what wound up happening. And then there's my summer games, which I remember this last year's most vividly. But I think one of the ones that I remember more so is the first one back in 2015 when the ships were on the ground.
Yep.
And I didn't have a blue ocean mat. It was just, it's not really hardwood floor, but it was the laminated wood floor that the game was played on. And that, I think, is the biggest map ever played. Yep. So I have trouble picking a favorite for ones that I've been in.
Yeah, that makes sense.
As you can probably tell.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. Yeah, my favorites overall would be CG1 and Command the Oceans, pretty much a toss-up. As I talked about towards the end of the Huge Game Legacy thread, CG1, for me at least, was the game with the least amount of flaws and frustration. So that one is just epic, and it was kind of the perfect campaign game experience, and it wrapped up without dragging on too much. It was amazing. Of course, Command the Oceans was better looking and bigger, and it took a lot more
Oh yeah.
actual hours to play, but it was a lot more frustrating and whatnot. So those would be generally my two favorites. My favorites of yours would be 2015 Century of Empires, and then COEC 2019. I would say would be probably tied. Maybe a slight advantage to this year's game, but I don't know. That's the tough one. And COEC 2018 I liked a lot too. The Winter Economy game I liked a lot too. So for you, it's like between those four, it's very very close between all those. I loved 2015 because it was unique with that huge setup and stuff. I remember the English battle squadron was that big. The Bauchuan getting wrecked on a reef, and then the pirates failing to raid.
Still slightly mad about that.
Yeah, I don't blame you. And then the Spanish staving off home island raids by the pirates. Those are the stuff I remember most.
Oh yeah.
I love the look of the Triumph too. I always see that ship and I'm just impressed by that custom. Even though it's not like super doctored up, I love that the combination of the mass and the hull. So it's an awesome ship.
Yeah, I tried to make when I build the custom ships out of the spare bits, or I have to take 2 or 3 ships to make one custom. I try to make them look interesting. So it's kind of funny to me that you like the look of that Triumph so much, because to me it kind of looks like plain Jane, but the trick is in the lighting. All right, you can have a plain looking ship, or I guess a historically accurate looking ship with not so much fancy artwork going on, but if you take the picture in the right lighting, it's like, whoo, oh boy, that looks really nice.
Yep.
I think the Notre Dame that I made, I got I think I used 2 or 3 Royal Louis to make that ship. I don't know where I pulled the hull from, but I can find out.
Yeah.
So that one looks really nice every now and again.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I do like that one too. Yep. And yeah.
I know the pictures you're. Yeah.
No, you go ahead. It'll be more relevant.
Yeah, I know the pictures you're talking about with La Triumph from the 2015 game.
Yep.
Because periodically over the years, there were times I would go back and look at the reports that I did, and seeing the reactions, ooh, when you would quote on mini trading that picture file. I think it's the one where the lighting is such that you see a mirror reflection of the ship in the floor. So it's okay, you've got the ship on the top or on the foreground, and then mirrored right below it is the ship, but slightly shimmery, ghosty looking. So I know I'm pretty sure I know the pictures you're talking about when you talk about seeing La Triumph in the 2015 game.
Yeah, or just any game.
I guess that means I'll just have to. Convert that over into a video report sooner rather than later, maybe.
Yeah, that'd be cool to see. Yeah, so now that we've talked about the best ones, we can talk about the worst campaign games we've played, or our least favorites. So, according to my Huge Game Legacy thread, I've got CG2 on there. For me, not a lot of combat. The ocean shape, it was essentially square, but it looks rectangular. It was kind of tall in a weird way. I didn't really like it. So, and I did that because there were 4 factions, not 5 or 6 or more. And then there were a lot of
it was going to be simpler.
And then one of the players dropped out early, and then Kaz didn't really want to finish it, kind of understandably, but still, it just it didn't really work out properly. So I was really happy to win with the English, my favorite faction. But anyway, and then it says under worst CG with a question mark, it says dishonorable mention to second 2,500 pointer for being somewhat lame and boring. So those would be my least favorite. And yeah, some of the results of yours I dispute. Not the gameplay, but at least not much of the gameplay, but some of the results for yours I seem to have a beef with often. But oh well. What's your least favorite?
Hands down, it's the Winter Economy game that I tried to play.
Yeah.
And not for gameplay reasons, but for outgame drama that happened between the 4 of us.
Okay.
So that was we were all a little younger, slightly less mature. Shouting happened. End of story. I'll leave it there. So that's the reason I have let's not go back to that.
Yeah. That's actually one of my favorites of yours, in terms of gameplay. But then the ending, like, not completely ruined it, but it was like, oh god, no.
Yeah.
Not the
It's like when you
Spanish.
are eagerly waiting. Yeah.
I was like, not the Spanish, not the passive new player who just saved the whole game and didn't fire a shot. Please no.
Well, he shot at like 3 of my English ships at the very end of it. I think. Yeah.
Okay.
I think he I don't know what he did. He found a way, I think, to get Carbon Charlie on one of his English ships somehow. I mean, on one of his Spanish ships somehow.
Huh.
It was, I don't know.
That sounds hard.
There's some weird stuff that went down that game. But like, you're oh please God no. It's like, when you see like, your favorite book adapted into a movie and you go into it all excited, and then like, you get to the end and like, no, don't. That's not how it is in the book.
Yeah.
That kind of thing was like, ah.
Yep. And yeah, so yeah, I had a ton of fun making the superlative section at the end of the huge game legacy thread. Mostly concerns my games because some of the reports were either unavailable or I couldn't remember them enough. But yeah, to include some of yours, but I still did in some occasions. But some of the categories, just like I made these up like really quickly. So like I think it was I may have started brainstorming in my head and then I had to start just typing it out. And it was like I came up with so many categories based on the stats and like the actual gameplay and stuff like that. So some of the funniest ones, yeah, most controversial, the Pirates in my first 2,500 total point game. The curse weren't really in it at the end, so they used Davy Jones to sort of help the Pirates win. I kind of left it open ended as to whether or not it was on purpose, but it curse basically helped the Pirates win over the Spanish. And like I was telling Piranha about it, or somebody on the podcast, and yeah, the final gold scores for that game were 48 to 45 to 43. So if the Spanish had gotten one or both of their Concepcion galleons home, they probably would have won. So yeah, that one was dramatic. And then of course, and then it says likely even more controversial.
Yep. Oh, yep. Oh yeah. Some slightly immature actions coupled with some strange, I guess, in retrospect, winning conditions made for an interesting final standings.
Yeah.
That was another interesting one too, because like CG2, I only used 4 factions for that.
Yep.
I cut out the pirates and the cursed completely, but you could still hire the privateers, like the Jades and the Corsairs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That
Plus, I also I think broke my own rules with that, like consistently. Like the Americans, I recall, were like, okay, we don't really have any gold runners. Let's just go get some Corsairs. And so they would use the Corsairs to run gold and have them dock at their home island, which they weren't supposed to do. And then when they did, it was like, okay, the ship's supposed to go away, but you can bring it back for, the point cost in gold and whatever. But they kept forgetting to do that.
Yep.
And like, that wasn't just them. I think everyone forgot to do that. When they had privateer factions. I mean, I forget who had the Bauschwan for that game, but, it was a similar thing. It was like, okay, someone had the Bauschwan and had it dock at the home island and then had it leave, or some other Jade ships. And it was, like, oops, forgot to, pay the fine, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where that's a tough one, because penalties would have to be across all the people, so you can kind of just say whatever and just keep playing. That's where I like to have like steep penalties for like accidental rule breaking. If you remember from Economy Edition, the Americans hired a submarine.
The Americans got dinged like 90 gold.
I think it was 60, because it was like I can't remember how I calculated it. I guess I'll try to look it up. But yeah, and that's one of my favorite quotes from the game that you can see in the HD Legacy. The Americans actually lost money on the fiasco because they got the Devil Ray to go to the lagoon before they should have been able to, but then they had to pay up. They had to I think it was the cost of the Devil Ray and her helmsman 12 times 5 turns in play for 60 gold that she only brought back like 30 gold or something like that, or less maybe. So yep. So I'm not gonna look it up. That's what it was. So yeah.
I think what I did, because we couldn't keep track of how many turns we'd had the ships in play, I think what I did was I just find everyone All right, everyone, cough up the current point count in gold of whatever you've got in play. So I think the English got hit the hardest with that because I think the English had the fully decked out Bauschwan, plus at the time the 3 other Jade Rebellion ships we had in our fleet.
Yeah.
So for a while we had the Jades were the Bauschwan and like 3 of the 2 masters, and that was it.
Yep.
We didn't have any of the 3 masters, didn't have any of the 6 masters, and we had like 4 of the named crew. And I think it was we had Ms. Chen with Cheng Pao or whoever else is on her card, and Qian Ni, and that was it. We didn't have Shiping Sai, didn't have Katsura-chan, didn't have Dragon Eyes, didn't have those guys. Still don't have Warlord Cavendish, but I am patiently waiting for that to happen. I'll get it one day.
Yep. Yeah. And under the superlatives, I noticed a thing that was exactly the same. Let me try to find it again. Oh yeah, so I think it's most controversial and then closest finish are like the same categories, which makes sense.
Oh yeah.
So the same games for those two. And then most pathetic I've always found funny. It's Americans in CG1 where they were a vassal state to the Spanish, which was so ironic and like really bizarre. And like the wordplay on that was funny. And then yeah, some of my other factions in different games there. And then dishonorable mention to the Black Mamba, who in my 2015 economy game shot 0 for 6 with 3 ones across 2 shoot actions to dismass herself without doing any damage to enemies. Oh my god.
Oh yeah.
So that's one of my least favorite ships in the game.
Okay. Queen of Sheba, same ability, but better cannons, invariably, every time. It doesn't matter who uses it among us 3, whether it's me, JW, or Ginger, 2 ones. Every single time. It's like, well, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that happened in the winter economy game. I mean, I think because the Queen of Sheba's got like 4 or 5 cargo pretty quick. So JW was like, all right, cool. So I've got a captain, a helmsman, and that's about all I can afford. So that's what goes on it. Out we go. I feel good. Let's go shoot these guys. 1. Well, dang it. Okay, I hope I don't miss the next one. Also gets a 1. You got to be kidding me.
Yep.
It was one of those instances where I think he was like, get me some new dice.
Yeah.
I'm not using this one anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where I'd roll back and just use her as a gold runner. But yeah, she's one of those neat ships that can be a cheap hybrid. So it's very tempting, but sometimes it backfires. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then, oh man, I just love these categories. This is the HG Legacy is maybe my favorite page on my site to reread over time. I think I'm going to look at it again before I leave. So yeah, the English had 3 consecutive wins, basically, or 4 if you include the big death match after the Risk game where they were part of the attacking alliance. So that's the longest win streak. But now we've seen multiple win streaks since then. So the English won CG2 and then CWC 2017, and then specifically in your games, obviously the French and the Cursed have a couple win streaks each of 2 in a row. So yeah, pretty fun stuff to think about. And then the Pirates did really well early on in my games, but then since then, not quite as much. So they look good in CG4 so far, but that's so early, it's ridiculous. So yeah. I think CG4 is already going to break the trend of Vassal campaign games that actually finish, because CG1 and CG2 were both less than a year, finished in 2016. CG3 spanned 2 years, but it was really only a 6-month game. But then CG4 has already been going on for like a year and a half, and it's not going to end for a long time.
Quite some time.
Yeah, that could be a decade game, maybe. I don't know. Let's see what happens.
Let's go for it.
Yep.
We'll slowly cycle through all the ships.
Yep. Man, oh my god. So I just realized something. Between both of us, Pirates haven't won a campaign game since 2015 Economy Edition. Because they never won any of your games.
There's been what?
The Pirates haven't won any campaign games since 2015 EE. So they've got 3 wins, but they were all 2011 to 2015 and never in your games. So they have the longest drought active right now. So yeah. Wow.
Perhaps they'll break it next summer.
Yep.
With us, or you never know. They could. I already think the Pirates in CG4 are a heavy favorite.
Yeah.
If only because as you said earlier, they've got the most WizKids stuff.
Yep.
And then, add in all the custom stuff that you and I, plus others, have made. It's, looking kind of in their favor.
Yeah.
What could derail them would be a couple, I guess, long durations of low-value resources around them.
Yep.
That would force them to go further out for the gold.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've been
that I think
so
would
far.
be like, the most surefire way to slow them down.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that the Pirates for CG4 have gotten really lucky.
Yeah.
Like every single resource change, something close to them has been valuable.
Exactly.
Except for maybe one resource change where it was 3 turns where everything around them was low value. But they just we'll just shake that off.
Yep. Yeah, they have been lucky, definitely. Yep. And now they've kind of angered the Vikings and the Corsairs a bit. So I'd love to talk about it more, but I don't want to reveal anything too much. So
yeah.
Yep.
With that split home island they could easily just okay, we'll leave you guys alone in the north. Okay, focus everything on the south, and we'll work our way north from there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because I know the CG4 is going to be interesting because it's round Earth.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I think it's the first campaign that's got round Earth, so that's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, that's a great.
How that
I just assumed that there's been a physical campaign game with round Earth, but now I'm wondering.
Well, okay, was Command the Oceans round Earth?
Not technically, no. It wasn't. So, I mean, I think, man, I might have to look this up. I think at least one of my 2,500 point games, maybe the second one, was round Earth, but it wasn't technically like a campaign game. It was a huge game, but not cumulative. Yeah. So let me just look that up. I don't know if it'll really have it, but probably. And yeah, this one is interesting. Oh, yep. Yeah, that one did have round Earth, but it's kind of borderline.
Oh, wow.
It's not true campaign, but yeah. So there's one physical at least that had that. Oh, and then I guess obviously the Risk game must have, but I don't know that I really used round Earth in the Risk game, so I might look that up real quick too. But yeah, the Risk game was awesome. It was a weird one. It's like, man, it just feels like so long ago. It almost feels like a lifetime ago. It's 7 years, but it feels like, in a weird way, it feels like.
Well, that was close to 10 years ago, mate.
Yeah, kind of.
According to your record here, that was in 2012.
Yeah.
The Risk game.
A little over 7 years, but it feels like more. So yeah, like my writing style is a little different. And, like there's no pictures. It's pretty wild.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know that I.
It's kind of like that mythic first campaign that I played.
Yeah.
And I think it was sometime in 2011. I could be wrong.
Yep.
But I forget when it happened.
Yep.
That first campaign that I played.
Yeah.
I know it was after I discovered mini trading, I think. Or I had found mini trading, if only because I'd found out about Return to Savage Shores.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was the only extra thing that we didn't have that I used. It's okay, first come, first serve. Whoever manages to get this guy can have him. And it was more or less, I'm trying to think, I might have done it factionally. Because I was English, I think my JW was the Americans or something. And then there was, Ginger had a third faction. I forget if it was the pirates or just, ships that he owned.
Yeah.
But I remember that I went out of my way to capture, not kill, but capture LeBeau from JW so I could use him.
Nice.
Because I think I was, like I said, I was English and he was American. So I think I successfully managed to get him away from the home island or something. I don't know. Details about this game are sketchy at best.
Well, that's exactly like my 2011 game before I wrote the battle report in November 2014 when I remembered it better than I would have now. So actually, that's actually one thing you could kind of repeat from something that I did, where I had kind of a mythical game from 2011 where I had a few small reports on Pojo, where I first started posting in the community. And then it was a little over 3 years later, and 5 years ago now, that I posted, well, I didn't finish the report, but I filled it out basically. So that's actually something you could do that game if you wanted, and you could actually ask your brothers about it to fill in details and stuff
I
like
don't know
that.
if they'll remember.
Yeah, well,
I
you could
mean,
still ask them. That's what's fun about
Ginger
it.
was like, I think, less than 10 years old when I played this.
Yeah. Yep.
So, yeah. I mean, I barely remember playing it.
Yeah.
But I think what made it interesting was I set it up and played it through to completion within a day.
Oh my god.
It was like, 2 days.
Huh.
The entire game was 2 days. Because for a Friday and a Saturday, or a Saturday and a Sunday, like a weekend. This was like I said, that's how few ships we had at the time, and B, I think that's just how quickly we managed to either cycle through the ships, or I just let certain things slide because my brothers were both younger and couldn't quite understand what I was trying to do, but understood enough to play along with me.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think writing up my cumulative game from 2011 was actually one of my favorite experiences with Pirate CSG. So yeah, it was
I've
so
thought
fun to
about
write
doing
up.
something like this here.
Yeah.
Like when you made the recreations for the harbor stuff, I'm like,
Yep.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
I tried to do this, and I made I got a bunch of spare cards out. I think the 2 of 3s and the 3 of 3 type things, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I arranged it out on a table. Like, okay, if I do it this way and this way and this way, and then I was like, oh yeah, that I want it this way. But then I looked at it and went, that's really big.
Yeah.
I can't fit more than one of these onto a table.
Yeah, it's wild.
And I had already made the decision then to where I'm not going to go back onto the floor, because even though we're all older now, I still do not want to risk stepping on ships.
Exactly.
Because, I don't have carpeting. I've got, hardwood floor.
Yep.
More or less throughout my entire house.
Yeah, the harbors are
carpeting.
crazy.
I hate it.
Yeah. For that game, I played with my whole bedroom basically, which was even more space. Century of the Empires wasn't even that whole room. It was maybe 50-60% of the floor space in that room. So that 2011 game was super unique. I would love to do harbors again, but it's the case where you need a huge amount of table space. I want to have tables that roll, so that you can. Oh, this is a great idea with blocking wheels. So then you can.
Like casters.
Yeah, exactly. So then.
Okay.
So then you could roll the tables together, but then you could separate them so you don't have to bend all the way over a table and reach and stuff. So that's an interesting one. I'll have to make a note about that.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay, the other thing I've thought about is, I don't know if you've ever done this, and I certainly haven't, but playing pirates on a round table.
I've thought about it because there's custom tables like that. I've seen a few pictures that are really beautiful. And I actually had, oh my god, this gets way back. Oh man. We had, I don't want to go off topic really, but we had, I don't know, I guess it might be gone now. We had a round table, wooden. It's probably only as wide as a card table, but it's a little bit less space because it doesn't have corners. But the problem is only a foot or a foot and a half off the ground. So you still have to, sitting in a folding chair, you'd be still really low. So that was actually in my room when I cleaned up my room a lot. I want to say in 2011 for preparation for the 2011 cumulative game, because I cleaned out a ton of space in my room to play that game that doesn't have any pictures from it. But yeah, I think some of most of my historical fantasy scenarios from early 2011 and maybe even 2010, if I was playing those then, that table was there, and it was cool because it had it was mostly empty underneath. It didn't have, you could basically go underneath, and then there was this part in the middle that connected the 3 legs. It had 3 legs instead of 4, I think. And then, so ships would go underneath this overhang. I didn't really think of it as a cave, but I think I had some harbors in there. So yeah, it was an interesting feature in my room for a while. But Yeah. But yeah,
Wow,
anyway.
that sounds really cool. Because I thought you had another round table though, a different one, unless it was the same one.
I don't
Because
think
some of
so.
the the non-campaign games that I saw battle reports for in mini trading,
Huh.
like the one where you had like two tables, I think that just barely connected to make like a little like stretch where you could sail across, like an ocean bridge.
I
One of
mean,
them was round, I think, to help facilitate that.
not that I remember. I'm trying to think about like college games where I'm not located anymore, but I don't think. I mean, at college it was all square. The bottleneck game from this year was like I kind of forced that with like terrain rather than tables. I still want to do it with tables, like card tables that form like almost like two diamonds lined up with like the edges touching barely. But I don't think so. I don't know.
Oh, it might have been the second ocean one,
Huh.
where you had the home
The other.
islands were on one
Oh,
ocean, and then you had whirlpools that led to another one,
yeah, the other worlds game.
and
I
both
don't know.
tables were kind of small.
Yeah, yeah. The
I
home
think this is
table was
before you
slower.
got like you either had like only one piece of blue fabric
Yep.
or something like that, or you didn't have the blue fabric stuff yet.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's possible. I don't remember, but yeah.
Because I could have sworn that you played like just a regular game on with that had a round table on it.
Interesting.
It wasn't like the 12 fleet game. I remember that with like the 4 or 5 best fleets at the time.
Yeah, that was on the carpet. Yeah.
Yeah, that's on the ground.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at the other worlds. I just searched them on my site, so I'm just gonna pop them up real quick, the reports. But I think the small short table is still like square or rectangular, but I'll just peek at it. So yeah, because the tables at college were just basic wooden tables, mostly square, and that's what I'm seeing now,
Yeah.
at least so far. Yeah, even the first Other Worlds game looks like it's all square, I'm pretty sure. So, yeah.
Well, I could have.
Maybe there's another
I
game,
could be misremembering.
I'm just not thinking of it. Maybe a different player, too, I don't know. But yeah, anyway, I like the idea of casters for future games with a lot of table space.
Yeah.
I think that's a really solid plan. Might help us.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, this is why I brought up the round table, but you get a really big round table, but it has like a hole in it.
Yes,
So
I thought
you can like go underneath and pop up in the middle and just like it's just wide enough to where you don't have to like really excessively reach to get the stuff that's on the far outside of the ring. But it's also like large enough to where you could have a decently sized campaign played on this thing.
Yeah, I've thought
Or
about
at the
that a
very
bunch.
least, a very interesting game of pirates.
Yeah, that's actually
Harkening back to I think the scenario. I think it was Cadet Captain Mike that might have done it first, but like all right, if you got a round table, let's have a race.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I thought about that idea too. The hole in the table. I just wouldn't want to have to crawl under it a bunch. So I think that would get annoying. And you might. I had to go underneath the Caribbean table for Command the Oceans to grab stuff once in a while. Or I think at one point I had deck plates off to my left in the same room right here, where they were almost under the table but not quite. And I was always afraid of like bumping the leg and like knocking stuff over. So
Oh yeah.
yeah, I'd want to have like a solid table or something. Oh, what if
Yeah.
you had?
In some of the
Oh my
shots
god.
from this year and last year, I think that the ones where I'm with the sun behind my back, so I'm looking east, like where the Spanish were. There is a dark table, like I think it's black with like dings in it because it's old. But there's a table like back there where they had all of their deck plates, like all of them were just right there.
Yep.
It's visible in a couple shots. Let me see if I can find one real quick.
Yeah, I feel like
because I think you might have been able to see them even in the finale.
Yeah, I think a few in the background, like not the whole table, but yeah. But yeah, just getting back to the round table. If you had a hole in the center, what if you had like the ocean? You could put your hand on it and slide it in a circle and rotate the ocean to like.
Oh, so like a really big lazy Susan.
Yeah, or like, well, sort of, but like maybe you could have a chair in the middle and like a decent spot in the middle where you wouldn't have to stand up, and then you could actually just place your fingers where ships weren't on the ocean, and then like move, and then the whole ocean would be circular and it would slide around, kind of like I mean, this is like the Stratosphere in Las Vegas up high in the restaurant, or like Niagara Falls has the tower where you rotate around it. So yeah, that would be wild.
I think I get what you're saying.
Like the ocean would be like one big circular sheet, and then you could slide it around and it wouldn't really be that beneficial. But if you just had, you could do the same type of thing with a chair that could rotate where the ocean was static, but then the chair you would swivel around, so which would be easier. But I don't know, just like the idea of a moving ocean would be hilarious. So.
So that got me thinking about something else. So I think I know what you're talking about with the moving ocean, but I thought of something slightly different.
Yeah.
Similar vein. But do you remember? I think it might have been God Mason who first posted them. But tables that have a glass top. Okay.
Yep.
So you, excuse me, you get a table with a glass top, round, and the top of that table is stationary, but the bottom under it, it's like you could open it up to put islands in and sandwich them between 2 layers of glass.
Yeah.
And the bottom layer you could unsandwich and rotate it, and then you could sandwich it back together. So you could say certain thing happens and just the entire world changes. So where the ships are on the very top layer of glass, but the islands and terrain are on the second layer, which opens up, and then you can spin it around and then put everything back together to now everything is in the same place, but not. So the ships haven't moved, but the stuff underneath them has.
That's pretty crazy. Yeah, that reminds me, I have up.
That would take some serious engineering, I think, to create.
Yeah, that reminds me of a thread I posted in July of this year on Pirates with Ben, a layered game table where you have reefs on the bottom.
Ooh, yeah.
Sargassos and icebergs, which is of course a forum topic. I'll just post it in the live thing on YouTube, the chat thing. But yeah, going back to the circular thing, and even the 2011 game, the Century of the Empires game, if you remember from the pictures, in that game, I basically set up the ocean in a circle with nothing could sail in the middle, because that's where I sat, and then I would just rotate around to play Century of the Empires 2013. So yeah,
all right, that makes some sense.
Yeah, it was kind of disappointing not have more space, because I wanted somewhere to sit, but it was worth it for convenience, because then I didn't have to step over as much when I was walking through the room.
Yeah,
and it was just easier to play. So
yeah, sit cross-legged here.
Yeah, exactly.
And then twist and turn. It's okay.
Yep.
Cursed move over here, and then twist back the other way. And now the English move over there. All that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yep. Yeah, I'll probably wrap it up soon. I never get sick of looking at the superlatives. And I'll have to update them over time. And of course, like I've already said, you can add your own in the comment that I can add.
I can add now. I couldn't before, but yeah, I can add now.
Yeah, most fragile goes to the French, because it says worst average finish in last fleet afloat games, with the exception of other, which doesn't really count for much. So, most durable English, best average finish in last fleet afloat games. The poorest, they're actually the Spanish, worst average finish in most total points games. And then most greedy or rich are the Pirates, which is perfect. Best average finish in most gold games. Yep. Most wild, chaotic faction, cursed in CG1.
Oh yeah, CG1, they were kind of all over the place.
Yep. Most imperial faction, English in general, but also Spanish in CG1, Americans in Century of the Empires. Yeah, the Americans in Century of the Empires, they didn't do super well, but they almost got 4 colonies or whatever at one point. And then the Americans in CG3, of course. Yeah, best year, English in 2012, essentially winning all 3 huge games, counting the Defense of St. Helens death match. And then yeah, at the end it says kind of the French in 2016, won 2, less than the other 2, which we talked about. So, and Pirates in 2011 won both. Worst year, 2014, no CGs.
Yep. I hadn't gotten to playing them yet.
Yep. And then worst year, Dishonorable.
Mike can't. Huh?
Oh no, just to finish up, worst year, it says dishonorable mention to the Spanish in 2012, 4th out of 5 in both major CGs, and on the losing end of the alliance at the Defense of St. Helens death match. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of revenge.
It's weird because...
Yeah, you go.
The Spanish, outside of campaign games, if you do it right, they're one of the most dominant factions you can pick. I mean, them, the Pirates, and the English are kind of like, the original Trinity. So those three tend to have a lot of very good things. Like, some of the best gold runners are Pirate and Spanish. Some of the best gunships are like, Spanish, English, and sometimes Pirate. But in campaigns where now you've got, not only do you need quality, but you also need quantity.
Yeah.
It kind of evens out a little bit.
Yeah, and the French have great quantity of both types of ships.
Oh, yeah. Still not my favorite faction to play, sorry.
Yeah.
But I will acknowledge that they are pretty good.
Yeah.
I think it was JW really wants to see his custom Premier Republique used again, because he just loves that ship. A combination of your least favorite ability and S immunity with his Man of War, which is it's a gunship only keyword. His I don't know if he's shared his sets yet, because unlike me, he makes his on Google Docs and stuff.
Yeah.
But he uses Google Docs instead of the spreadsheet because he has formatting stuff that he does. But I don't know if he's shared them. I gotta talk to him about that.
I don't think in full form you could piece most of Dark Tides together from forum posts, but he hasn't come out with a spreadsheet for a full set yet, I don't think. So, yeah.
Well, he doesn't like spreadsheets. He likes the Google Doc.
Yeah.
So I don't know if he's shared that. The one that yeah?
I don't think that I've seen. No.
I'll have to talk to him about that then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he's got he's got 2 finished.
Yeah.
Dark Tides and Seas of Doom are both completely finished. I think the one that he's working on now is Eldest Seas.
Yeah, that sounds
or
right.
Something like that.
Yep.
I don't know. I'll check him. I'll ask him later.
Yeah. And then for most satisfying story, it's kind of a lot like Best Revenge, because the Spanish almost won 2 of my earlier games, and then in CG1 they finally had that huge breakthrough win, which I guess is still that's still their only win. So they haven't won since then either. So
yeah. The Spanish got close. In 2018, the Spanish got close to second.
Yep.
But literally, the Pirates home island raided them on their 3 turns from the end, and the Pirates made off with 1,000+ gold in 2018, at the end.
Wow.
That sent the Spanish into 5th place.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
Or something.
Yep. Nice. Yeah, and then I think it's interesting that the Vassal games arguably have more parity or fairness, because the map doesn't get altered as much theoretically, and then there's not as many real life elements that affect the game, like somebody leaving, or that still happened in one of the games, but in CG2. But anyway, and then there's not the time constraint that can kind of what's the word? Not complicate, but compromise the rules a bit. So yeah. And then I said least fair 2011 CG. That one was bizarre because the harbor locations were too far from some of the islands, and then the English and I think the French maybe had to sail farther to get to any islands. So they were kind of off in these corners that were more distant. So yeah. Yeah.
That's my one caveat or whatever it is to the first one I played in 2015. Yeah. Really big map. Yeah. But not a whole lot of islands. So a lot of time sailing back and forth. Where I was like, okay, I moved every ship, and all my fast ships are still a turn or 2 away from where the gold is.
Well, and then oh yeah, so one interesting stat, largest single turn launching, it says English battle fleet in CG1 with 628 gold, but you may have broken that maybe? I can't remember exactly. It might be.
I have no idea.
Okay.
I have a bad habit of not actually writing down what I'm going to launch for what factions. JW did this for the first time this year, where he kept accurate track. Okay, on this day the English launched XYZ, and on this day or that same day the English had XYZ sunk. So I could ask him if he ever had something that exceeded 628 gold for either one of his factions. I think the English this year had a plan where they were going to launch almost 900 points of stuff, but they only had 300 gold. So they had to go and steal some from the French. That's why the Lady Provost home invaded the French anyways, because the French for a while had 1,000 plus. They had a penny. Yep. But then I think the French spent some to combat the English, and the English managed, I'm not sure how, with only one ship, they managed to steal, I think, 200 to 300 off the French home island and get a good chunk, the most important things that they wanted to launched.
Yeah. That's a crazy amount.
I'll ask him about that, if anything that he launched this last year exceeded 628.
Wow. Yeah, I think even when the Pirates raided the Franco-Spanish in Economy Edition, I don't think they came away with more than 100 and 150 gold. So that's a crazy amount. It's really impressive.
That's probably a result of
extra coins,
factions hoarding.
Yeah. And then
the play styles majorly different between you and I.
Exactly, yeah. So yeah, just to wrap things up, we can talk about a few of the future CGs are on hold. So CG4 is kind of in limbo. We've been playing a little bit this year. It's not really officially on hiatus, but it's going to be slow pace. It's going to continue. The Caribbean game and World Games are, of course, on hiatus. But looking to the future, the positives are that CG5 could start between you and others if you want to on Vassal. And then, of course, next year's CWC should be interesting. So anybody looking
5 years.
Yeah, that's awesome.
5 years.
Yeah.
The rough plan right now is that we're going to repeat the same factions we had then. So I would basically just repeat this year again, Pirates and Americans again.
Yep.
JW would keep the French, but would gain control of the Spanish. And Ginger would hold on to the Cursed, but now gain control of the English.
Nice.
So that's the plan for now. We might change it because I don't really want us to repeat the same factions every single year, or more than 2 years in a row, because it sometimes gets a little tiring. It's okay, I'm them again.
Yeah.
Because the first 2 times we did the summer games, the annual games, I was, or the next 2, the 16 and 17, I was England back to back.
Yeah.
And back to back, I got second or third in those games, if not outright winning, getting the top spot.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm maybe guys, maybe we'll see what happens. There's still a lot of real time between now and then.
Exactly.
I'm trying to find a job and all that other stuff. JW is going to community college. He might take off and go to a 4-year soon. And Ginger is midway through high school, so who knows?
Yeah.
Things can happen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Any other campaign game memories you want to talk about or stuff like that?
From this year? Oh.
Or any year. Well, any. Yeah.
I think some of my favorite moments from the Spanish and American War was, for whatever reason, for 2 actions or 2 turns, the Speedy Return was the MVP of the battle fleet. I basically sailed that double catamaran in there to be a block ship, to block lines of fire, and to be a meat shield, because I figured, catamaran will protect it, plus the house rule is it's 3-masted, it's kind of large, physically it takes up a lot of space, cannons aren't so good, but who cares, it's just there to get shot at and tank fire. What wound up happening was it just wound up positioned to where it could plug away or plink away at ships within range, And I think I got a perfect shoot action with it. I rolled like, a 5, a 5, and a 6, and hit a ship 3 times with the speedy return without a captain on it.
Oh my
it
God.
only had a helmsman.
Wow.
So it was just in position to shoot. And the Spanish could not, for like 5 turns, get rid of it. They were like, okay, I want to sink this, but we can't because we keep missing. That also goes to the Pawtucket, which I think had a captain, a helmsman, and a musketeer. So it had 4 shots even. Maximum damage could eliminate 2 masts. This was toward the end when it became a little bit obvious, or was becoming obvious that the Americans were losing. But the Pawtucket was kind of holding the line for a while off the coast of the shipwreck pathway, and was just, being annoying, because the Spanish would shoot at it and miss, and then it would come back, and through a combination of shooting and ramming, would eliminate at least 2 masts, or do enough damage to the ship that attacked it to where it couldn't then be damaged return. So Spanish moral victories was sinking the Speedy Return and sinking the Pawtucket. And then on the flip side, the Americans turned it on them when the USS Spirit, clipper ship, I think all rank 4 cannons. And it was, I had given it a captain at this point because it was like, okay, last ditch, convert the Gold Runners into fighters. We're in trouble. And with the fleet action, I managed to sink the Santissima, which the Spanish had added an additional 10 cannons to.
Yeah.
And they were like crazy. Really mad. So I was like,
that was crazy. I think that was the most.
I enjoyed that.
That was maybe the most shocking moment of the game for me.
Yeah.
Was when the ST went down that in that fashion.
Yeah.
That's bizarre.
Yeah. I was really happy when that happened. In the moment, it was like, yay, a victory! Yeah. I'm getting my ass kicked, but hey, here's some back at you.
Yeah.
And then, of course, after that is pretty much the Americans got steamrolled.
Yeah.
Because the pirates fell on them like a sledgehammer, and the Spanish were like, all right, we were going to leave you alone, but you sank our ship. Come back here and die. Or something like that.
Yeah, it's kind of like the French fighting the Spanish in CG1, at least to a degree. And yeah, talking about the Pawtucket Speedy Return, that reminds me of the Augusta was one of the most valuable ships, MVSs, of the Spanish fleet in that game. And that was a weird one, because she doesn't have very good cannons, and she was a really good gunship for them. So that was bizarre, too. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can add that to your list of hero ships. I think I have a ton of that. Yeah, it's fun to keep track of stuff like that over the years. San Esteban, man, she was amazing in a combination. Yeah, and then I think I was reading CG1 BR just recently, Battle Report, and I think she did well in that game too. So I think she had a couple years in a row where she was really lucky. So that one's like a weird Spanish hero ship as well. So, yep. All right. Yes. Yep. Probably gonna wrap it up.
Speaking of, recalling now future stuff.
Yep.
I am thinking that my ambitions for the Savage Seas project are a wee bit much for what I currently am capable of doing. So even though I don't really want to, I might just, say, okay, I want to get this done, or I want to have this out there before, just so I can have it out there, so I can have something to look forward to or to look back on. So I might just start making regular reports for that, but I'm still up in the air about the Savage Seas project.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be fun. Rather than releasing it all at once in the future, you mean?
Well, my idea was, the original idea for Savage Seas was I wanted to have, a web series, kind of.
Yeah.
Where I would, have some sound effects put in, some music put in. Between my brothers and I, we can make our voices different enough to where we could become different characters. You would have, character dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Victor de Alva talking to his father Luis, or his son Sebastian. I could, this is Victor, or whatever. And then his Sebastian would sound different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I don't know if I'll be able to do that with what I've got. And I don't want to just, sit on it forever. and go, one day I'll get it done. One day I'll get it done. One day I'll get it done. So in that sense, I'm a little impatient for it, but I also want to get it out there because some cool stuff has happened in that game.
Nice.
Because that's a campaign sort of, but it's really, I think it's fundamentally different than any campaign that's been done before.
Yeah.
At least as far as I know. Of recorded campaigns, it's different than, I think, well, it's similar to CTO, but not quite.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, I remember you saying stuff about that. So, yeah, that sounds exciting. Very nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's like something I want to do, but I'm not sure.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we look forward to hearing about it either way. So, if anybody listening is interested in playing campaign games, I've got a guide to huge games up on my website that you can search for or find pretty easily. The Huge Game Legacy thread and the Battle Reports Compendium are both located in the Best Post widget that's on on the sidebar for a lot of the pages, not all the pages, of course, but so a lot of great games you can read about pretty easily, and yeah, obviously some more games coming soon, especially on Xerecs' end, hopefully. So thanks again for listening. This was Pirate CSG podcast number 48, and I almost forgot question of the day, and now I'm remembering because I forgot to do that in the Creeps podcast last night. So I made one before the podcast, and my question of the day is, if you, the listener, have read more than one entire campaign game battle report, which campaign game is your favorite and why? And of course, Eric can ask one if he'd like. So if you've read more than one game, because if you only read Economy Edition, that would be your favorite. But if you've read EE, CTO, and Xerecs' 2019 game, you've seen that one, you could pick a favorite if you wanted to, and the reasons why. I'd be interested to hear about it. I know a lot of people probably haven't read any, let alone multiple, but just want to put it out there. So
I have read them.
yeah, of course. Oh yeah, we both read each other's. Sometimes more than once. Yep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a question of the day or no?
I don't have a question.
Yeah, no, that's
Sorry.
all good. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Yep. So that ends the podcast. Thanks for listening. And I'm hoping to do at least one more podcast before the end of the year. I want to try to figure out how to do a call-in podcast, but if I do, I'll advertise it. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you later.